Every landowner knows what their property is worth. The question is, does your buyer agree? My name's Alex Reese, and I have sold hundreds of pieces of land across the United States in the past few years. And what I can tell you is that the vast majority of those listings sold for less than I believed the property was actually worth. Selling land is hard. Most land sellers in the process of selling a property have to make a choice. Do you want to be right, or do you want to be paid? Because in most cases, you can't have both. See, when you set the price in your mind, the buyer that you're going to sell that land to is going to visit that property. And this is a person that does not know what you know about this land. And often, no matter how much you tell them about all the qualities and features that made you fall in love with it, they're going to overlook all those things. And that person that doesn't know what you know about that property is going to set the price. And a lot of times that price is going to be lower than you ever thought. And that's hard. I know it's hard because I've lived it. Selling land successfully is a game of modesty, patience, and flexibility. Ego is your enemy. The reason why is that your ego is going to cloud you. And your ego is going to convince you of something that's not true. Because what your ego will be telling you is that this whole thing, it's all about you. But it's not. It's not about you at all. Because in a land transaction, your buyer is the hero of the story, not you. Your buyer's taking the risk. They are exchanging a large amount of money for a property of similar value that even if they changed their mind the day after closing and wanted to sell it, they couldn't even get their money out of it. They lose thousands of dollars just in transaction costs, and that's if everything went according to plan. When does that happen? They're taking the risk. And for that reason, your role as a seller, and if you have a listing agent, their role too, is to be a guide for that buyer, to help them get through the process of due diligence so that they can be confident that the land is worth more than the money in their pocket. Part of why it pays you to let go of this need to be right is because land prices are never fully known. Because the price of a piece of land is so often going to be based on a series of external factors that really don't have anything to do with that piece of land itself. For example, construction costs are significant, as well as the fluctuating values of the finished construction of homes in that market. For example, the National Association of Home Builders, they put out an annual construction cost survey where they get into all these details about the component costs that go into actually building a home, as well as the sale price of the home that they finally build and then sell to an end buyer. Unsurprisingly, the actual construction cost and the total construction cost of the home itself is over 60% of the final sale price of the home. No surprise there. But what you see is a number of different inputs that relate to foundations, framing, finishes, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, etc. You have these different inputs that are part of dynamic marketplaces that themselves are always changing too. But take a look at this. There's one line item that they cover in their survey, and it's called finished lot cost. So this is 17.8% of the sale price of the finished home, at least according to the 2022 data that we're looking at here. And you may have guessed it, yes, this is the land that's underneath the home. However, it's not just the land. This is the land that includes all the costs of clearing, grading, as well as extending any utilities to the site so that that piece of land is fully prepped as a building lot for a future home. So it's not just the raw land, it's a lot of other expenses that go into that. And finished lot cost as a percentage of the home's sale price is it's a number that changes, but it changes with market cycles, but within a very narrow band. So for example, in the polling data that they had from 1998 through 2022, finished lot cost as a percentage of home value was never higher than 26%, and it was never lower than 17.8%. And so the point is that there are external factors that bear on the land that you are hoping to sell. And the people that are likely to buy that land are home builders. They're residential land buyers, either professional builders or single-family homeowners that are working with a builder to put a house on that piece of land. And if the numbers don't pencil out and there's a little bit left over, they're not going to buy it. So please take a moment, if you haven't already, like this video. If you benefit from the information in this video, it also really does help the channel, and it helps other people that are on YouTube know that this is a video that's relevant to them because they can benefit from this information as well. So a lot of people that are following me so far are thinking, hey, well, I understand that there's a number, and beyond that, the buyer can't make the offer. Understood, but the problem that a lot of people have is the fact that the buyer is still making a profit. And if that's true and the buyer's making a profit, then hey, can't they at least pay me a little bit more? Well, it's the right idea, but the problem is, and the reason it's not correct, is because your buyer needs to get a good deal. Land buyers need to get a good deal, or else there's no deal at all. And the only reason that it's going to be worth it for them to exchange the money in their pocket for this piece of land is because they think that there's some surplus value for them, that the land that they're buying from you is worth more to them than the money that they're paying you to buy that land. And so you need to leave a little meat on the bone, or else the deal just doesn't get done. You know, I talked to a landowner once who was discouraged because she had a couple buyers go under contracts to buy the property and then they backed out. And when I was looking at her property, I saw that it was beautiful, but when I looked at the soil map, I could see that it had a big area of wetlands on it. In fact, it was mostly wetlands. When I asked her about it, the small area that was outside the wetlands, she told me that that was where they wanted to build a home, but they couldn't perk that property. And they couldn't install a septic system, and so they couldn't even build where they thought they were able to. And she wanted to sell it for any price that was reasonable. And the advice I gave her was, look, you know, you look at property that's kind of recreational where someone's not going to build a home, but there's still value. It's still a beautiful piece of property, and you got to look at what those properties are really selling for. I think you want to bring it to market at like $25,000, $29,000. You want to price it so low, and you want to put in the listing description, hey, this land does not perk, it's unsuitable for septic systems, and you want to discourage buyers from calling you. Because the buyer that's in the market for a recreational property like that, it's going to blow their hair back because they're going to see, oh my gosh, in a marketplace where every piece of land is overpriced, this is such a good deal, and it's unlike anything else on the market. And when they make you an offer, it's going to be at list price, it's going to be a cash offer, and it's going to be a quick closing timeline. And during that entire closing process, that buyer is going to be quiet. They're not going to say anything because that buyer in the back of their mind is going to be thinking, does she know that she could have got more for this? Does she know how low she's pricing it? Does she know that she probably could have done better here? And if you feel at the end of the day like, hey, maybe I could have gotten $5,000 more out of it, you've won. And that's how you have to think about it, not on every listing, but on a lot of them, especially if you've been discouraged about selling in the past and you haven't been successful. Because the reality is, a lot of landowners have a very false sense of liquidity. They think everybody's lining up around the corner to buy their land, and they're not. It's not true. But the good news and the consolation for people that have realized that the hard way is that when you price land correctly, it's not going to take long to sell. It's going to sell in a few months, 3 to 6 months. It's not going to be years. To give you an example, I want to look at some recent market data. This is, I accessed this data literally the day I recorded this. This is in Johnston County, North Carolina. This is a really hot and fast-moving rural market right outside Raleigh. This is a market where there's a lot of development, there's a lot of suburban subdivisions. And I want to look at the market for 10 to 20 acre tracts of land. When you look at this marketplace and you see in the last 12 months sales data, in Johnston County, the median sold price of land between 10 to 20 acres in size was $250,000. And that is sort of exemplified by this listing right here. This is kind of your median listing. However, when you look at the current listings on the market, the median for sale price of land of the same exact characteristics, same size, same location is $310,000, meaning that the average listing is approximately 24% overpriced when you compare it to what it's actually likely to sell for. For example, look at this listing here. This is a listing that's been on the market for 230 days, which is somewhere between 7 and 8 months. But look at the price history. You know, it's potentially overpriced now, but this is a listing that started at $415,000, which is 66% higher than the median sold price in this market. Since listing it at $415,000, they dropped price by 31%, and the kicker, they're still overpriced. You may be thinking, well, hey man, why not try the market? Why not test the market, see if you can get more? And the answer is because it doesn't work. See, land buyers are smart and they're looking at comparable sales and other listings in this market. They can see that it's overpriced from a mile away. And the problem that creates for the seller is that because they see it's overpriced, they pay no attention to it. And so the listing becomes almost invisible to them. And because they're not looking at it, there's no urgency because they know other buyers probably aren't paying it much attention either. And so it sits and there's no offers and the days on market start to add up. And when that happens, you have turned something that is intrinsically scarce and special. It is this irreplaceable piece of land in a great market, you've made it ordinary. You've taken a scarce, rare, valuable item and you've made it common. Because if it's been on the market and everybody saw it for 8 months, there must be some issue with it, even when you get the price right. And that's what's happening here. See, they're dropping price bit by bit, but they're still chasing it. They're still chasing it because they're just not there yet. And is it a great property? I think it's awesome. I think it's a really cool property and I like it. But the problem is that until these sellers cut price to something closer like $265,000, they're just not serious. They're just not serious yet until they do that, because I think that's where they have to be, not to even sell it, to get buyers to really pay attention. Because buying land's hard and you need to take care of the buyer in that exchange or else there's no deal to talk about. So you see this in recent comps in this same exact market, just like this one. Now, this was the property next to the 250K comp we just looked at. And the one right next door to it sold at $265,000. But look at the price history on this listing. They listed this at $265,000 and it sold right at full asking price 8 to 10 weeks later. In hotter land markets like Johnston County and even any land market for that matter, you really have two scenarios when it comes to the market and the current listings for land on the market. You have the listings that are priced competitively and they sell fast. And then you have the listings that are overpriced and won't sell. And there's really no middle ground. It's one of the two. Because unrealistic expectations for the seller and overpriced listings that result are the biggest impediment to a successful sales process. But once you solve that problem, your success is all but guaranteed. If you like this video and you want to get a little deeper into the psychology of selling land, I'm going to leave a link here to the next video on our channel that I think you're really going to enjoy.